So there's an update in the H3H3 lawsuit case with Triller Fight Club. We had previously covered the lawsuit where they sued a whole bunch of people, and the judge threw that out because you couldn't join all those people into one lawsuit and have the judge adjudicate one set of facts when everybody's claim and facts behind it were going to be different. So the judge tossed out everybody except the one defendant, Film Daily, including tossing out the H3 podcast. So now Triller Fight Club II has filed a new lawsuit against the H3 podcast specifically. This will be a short video covering the new information and Ethan's reaction, plus the claims made in the new case and the laws allegedly violated. The new case makes similar allegations to the previous case, Triller versus Film Daily. Film Daily is now the only defendant remaining in that suit. No other Triller suit has been filed as of this writing, just the Film Daily case and now this H3 podcast case. The basic claims are for these several violations here, counts 1 through 6, starting with copyright infringement. Oh, we have an interruption. Hello. How are you, honey? How are you? All right, why don't you get down so I can do my show? Triller claims that the H3 podcast uploaded the broadcast of the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren fight to their YouTube channel, and that the broadcast is still available on the H3 podcast YouTube channel. It appears to be this one in the bottom right corner, H3 podcast number 244. The plaintiff doesn't point to a specific video, but the only one I can find is this live stream where Ethan comments about the fight. Ethan then talked about the lawsuit on the H3 After Dark number 35 live stream, which I'll link to up there. Ethan says he showed only about 45 seconds of the fight live stream, that his use was only commentary, and that he is prepared to defend by citing to the first H3 lawsuit from Matt Haas. He says that he has to watch his words because he's hoping to facilitate an amicable resolution in mediation. He's biting his tongue.
I'm walking delicately because I just want to resolve this in mediation with them. I don't want to go to litigation with them. So we're just gonna try to be nice. I'm going to try to be nice for now.
He said they shot an H3 podcast episode where he kind of went off on the situation and was unkind to Jake Paul and Triller, but his lawyer thinks that he should wait to release that until the situation is resolved. He eventually says he'll either release the episode or he'll have some out-of-character public statement to make. One point that seems to be constantly brought up here is whether Keemstar is correct that Ethan's going to jail. No one's going to jail. This is a civil lawsuit. You don't go to jail for civil lawsuits unless you commit some kind of criminal contempt of court or criminal act in the defense of your civil lawsuit. Most prosecutors won't prosecute a minor copyright offense like this as criminal copyright infringement. Criminal copyright infringement is for the worst of the worst kinds of infringers. I think we have a video on it, so I'll put a bubble up there. In a civil copyright claim like this, the maximum statutory damages are $150,000, and that's per infringed work, not per view. So maybe the plaintiff will actually claim actual damages instead of statutory damages. Statutory damages are set by law because it's hard to prove actual damages. If I pirate a movie, would I have paid for that movie if I didn't pirate it? What's the value of the movie? Is it the ticket price to go see it? Is it the store price to go buy it? Is it the sale price at the store? It gets complicated, so statutory damages bypass all of that, and the parties argue over how bad the offense was, and the judge chooses a number in a range, or maybe the jury gets assigned to choose a number in a range. Cox Communication was recently hit with $10,000 per musical work that was infringed when they refused to implement a user termination policy for the copyright infringement of their users. But Triller here could choose to prove actual damages, where they show the facts of the infringement and claim that each unauthorized view of the fight would be worth the $50 ticket price for having viewed the fight live. And then H3 would argue that no, it was actually much less because it was after the fact and it was only 45 seconds. And the parties would go back and forth, and the judge would have to decide, or the jury would have to decide, which facts to admit as the accepted facts for the case. And then the damages would be calculated based on what has actually been proven. That could be much higher than $150,000 if it gets to that point. One interesting point from the After Dark live stream is that Ethan called his original lawyer from the Matt Haas case total frauds.
A lot of the issue with the last lawsuit too was like finding a good lawyer, not knowing anything about lawsuits and the legal ramifications of stuff, having to learn everything, finding out that our original lawyers were like total frauds, having to fire them, doing all this shit, finding new lawyers. I mean, it was such a horrible situation.
Yeah, it was traumatizing.
Back to the Triller lawsuit, plaintiff claims that H3 Podcast's unauthorized use resulted in over 1 million unique views of the illegal stream and over $50 million in damages. So in count 1, Triller claims basic direct copyright infringement, like we've described. Then in count 2, this is a Federal Communications Act Section 605 violation. Section 605 prohibits persons who transmit or receive wire or radio communications from divulging such communications to unauthorized persons. The law is intended to prevent the interception and rebroadcast of communications like satellite, radio, or cable transmissions. Whether this law applies to a fair use dispute on YouTube has yet to be seen. Civil enforcement of this law is allowed. Penalties range from $1,000 to $10,000 for each violation of the interception/rebroadcast provision, and the court can increase the penalty to $100,000 for a willful violation for commercial advantage or private financial gain. Count 3 is a claim for another section of the Federal Communications Act, Section 553, which allows criminal and civil claims against someone who intercepts transmissions of a cable system. That definition seems to include a private, closed-path cable TV system. I'm not sure if the H3 podcast intercepted a cable TV transmission, but that's the claim and that's what the law seems to say. Violators can be fined $250 to $10,000, increased up to $50,000 if the violation was willful and for commercial advantage or financial gain. The court can reduce the penalty to $100 when the violator was not aware it was violating this law. Count 4 of the lawsuit is for conversion. Plaintiff claims at least $50 million in conversion damages. Conversion is when you claim ownership to someone else's property without a right to that ownership. It's slightly different from theft, in the same way that a square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. A common law school example is when I visit your house and forget my umbrella. The moment you form the intent to keep the umbrella and use it as your own, that's conversion. So theft is conversion, but not all conversions are theft. Triller appears to be claiming that the H3 podcast converted the Jake Paul Ben Askren stream to use as their own. In my experience, courts will often not allow a copyright infringement claim to also be a conversion claim, but that's just my legal opinion. Some courts have ruled that intangible property cannot be the subject of a conversion claim. Conversion would be more appropriate for a particular object. Copyright infringement would be more appropriate for the underlying copyrighted work. Plus, federal preemption means that copyright law supersedes and should override a conversion claim for a copyrighted work. Count 5 is for an alleged violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The CFAA allows both criminal charges and civil claims for violations of computer systems. It prohibits accessing a computer without authorization. Triller's claim here appears to be that the H3 podcast illegally accessed a computer containing plaintiff's broadcast of the Paul Askren fight. Recovery for a Computer Fraud and Abuse Act claim would be limited to actual economic damages. Count 6 is a claim for vicarious copyright infringement. Vicarious liability is when you have the right or ability to supervise another, who then commits infringement within the scope of their supervision. The most common example is the employer's liability for violations committed by the employee within the scope of their employment. In copyright, dance hall owners were found vicariously liable for unauthorized performances by bands they had hired. A similar law is the law of contributory infringement, where a person induces or authorizes another person to commit direct infringement. Triller claims that the H3 podcast encouraged users to copy, share, download, and distribute the broadcast, and induced users to engage in the unauthorized reproduction, adaptation, public display, and public performance of plaintiff's broadcast. They once again claim damages in excess of $50 million. Dropped from this suit appear to be any mention of an injunction, which was something the court mentioned in the previous Triller suit. All defendants except Film Daily were dropped from that suit for improper joinder, meaning the parties weren't connected enough to have the court adjudicate the claims for all defendants at once. Injunctions require irreparable injury, meaning the damages can't be remedied by the payment of money. The previous judge had said that all of Triller's claims appear to be monetary in nature, and therefore an injunction is unlikely. Some of you have written to me asking about the potential for a copyright claim over the source material that Ethan used purportedly for a fair use. If he obtained his copy of the fight from an unauthorized source, is that a separate claim for copyright infringement? The answer isn't 100% clear to me. Yes, I can see the claims being separate. First, a claim for obtaining your source material illegally from an unauthorized stream, and another claim for the dispute over the subsequent alleged fair use. To me, an example would be if I went to the bookstore and I took pictures of a book's contents for my later fair use. I probably violated copyright. But there are copyright exemptions for breaking encryption to access a source material for a fair use. These are usually for genuine academic purposes and don't say anything about obtaining a copy illegally. So buying a DVD but having to crack the CSS encryption in order to make a later fair use, that's probably covered by the exemption if you meet the rest of the criteria. But downloading a pirated movie and making a fair use of that material could be two separate copyright claims. You might win on the fair use claim but still lose on the direct copying of a pirated movie. So that's the H3H3 update. Ethan says they will be trying to mediate a resolution. That could happen soon, or it could happen months from now. And that mediation will be private, and the result will probably also be private. As Ethan says, if they resolve the matter, he might be back with an update, suddenly praising Triller and Jake Paul for being a phenomenal media organization deserving of the utmost respect.
Yeah. So there'll be two outcomes. Either I'll come out with that lost episode, or I'll come out next week and be like, Jake Paul is my best friend. We buried the hatchet, and Triller, by the way, is a phenomenal media organization that I have the utmost respect for.
I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I'll update you as soon as I have any news. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And that's our show. Thanks for joining me. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and this is Lawful Masses, your favorite legal news and education program here on YouTube, also on Floatplane and on twitch.tv/lawfulmasses, live on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. This is a community-supported channel, which means I need your money. It takes time and effort to make these videos, and in order to make room in my life, I need to also have support. So I really appreciate your support on patreon.com/ljfrench or sponsors.com/law. You can support the channel through YouTube memberships, or you can support the channel through Floatplane subscriptions. Thank you very much in the month of May to the following $50 plus supporters: Joe Tyson, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Spirit Bear, Benjamin Hitov, Ugly Grill, Rudolph Bescherer Jr., Brandyn, Abel, Torpedan, RDHDragon, Earthbound Star, and ShadowTycho. And thank you to the $5 plus supporters who are scrolling on the screen in front of me. You're all on the LED tablet behind me. I love you all. Thank you for joining me. I'm Leonard French. I'll see you in the videos that drop and the comments below.